Hello, and welcome to Life Diaries, a space where the pages of life open up, one story at a time. These are tales written by experience, spoken from the heart. Take a moment for yourself, and let's begin. Sarah lived near her father. When she was 6, her mother left her, going to Italy with her new husband. Since then, for 16 years now, she had not once remembered her daughter's birthday. Now, Sarah was 22, finishing her university education with a dream of becoming a banker, like her father, or more precisely, of eventually taking his place at the head of the family banks. But first, internships awaited her, first in England, then in Belgium, and only after that did her father promise to take her under his wing. Her entire life, from 9 to 17, was scheduled with almost frightening precision. An elite gymnasium with advanced language studies, music school, grueling swimming training. Once a week, an economics and law tutor invariably came. In such a whirlwind of activities, the girl had almost no time left for personal attachments, for friendships, which her father seemed immensely happy about. He jealously guarded his daughter from outside influences, especially from the opposite sex, and even when Sarah was already a student, the control did not weaken, extending to almost every step she took. Her only close soul was the neighbor girl, Chloe. Their interaction happened exclusively within the territory of one of the 2 yards. This continued until a graduate student named David appeared at their university. The young man was working on his dissertation and sometimes visited his academic advisor, who, by coincidence, held the position of dean of Sarah's faculty. Their meeting happened at the dean's office door. David was leaving, and Sarah was just about to enter. They literally bumped heads. Usually composed and sensible, Sarah suddenly felt completely flustered at the sight of the unfamiliar young man. Excuse me, I almost knocked you over," the girl mumbled, apologizing hastily. "No, it was me who almost knocked you down. Please, I beg your pardon." He, in turn, hurried to apologize. Oh, how awkward that was. Terrible. "Is Professor Thompson in?" "Yes, I just came from him. Please go in." "Thank you." "Wait." The young man suddenly stopped her. "Perhaps, as a sign of reconciliation and mutual apologies, we could have a cup of coffee?" Sarah, unaccustomed to such signs of attention, looked at the stranger in surprise. "Coffee?" she repeated. "Yes. Don't you like coffee?" "Why, yes, I do. It's just somehow—" Sarah searched for the right word, not knowing how to explain that this was the first time she had been invited to such a meeting. Unexpected? Not at all. A beautiful girl like you has surely heard such a proposal many times. "Well, yes," Sarah answered shyly, and suddenly, to her own astonishment, she said, "All right, let's meet in the foyer in about 20 minutes. "Excellent. I'll be waiting." Sarah would remember this exciting feeling, born from meeting the young man, very often later. Before, she had never experienced anything like it. And it wasn't just her father's restrictions. No, she genuinely lacked the time. And now, she was essentially a graduate. England loomed on the horizon. And suddenly, she desperately wanted to just talk to this guy. Having finished her conversation with the dean, Sarah descended to the foyer, where her new acquaintance was already waiting. "Sorry to keep you waiting. I was a little delayed." David almost dropped his briefcase. It was the first time he had seen a girl apologize for being 2 minutes late. He had waited longer, and those girls not only didn't apologize but seemed incapable of doing so. "Nonsense, you're not late," he smiled. "Perhaps we should introduce ourselves?" "Oh, what a scatterbrain I am! I didn't even tell you my name." Sarah blushed again, extending her hand. "Sarah." "Then I'm a scatterbrain too. I didn't introduce myself either." The young man smiled, shaking her hand. David. Very nice to meet you. Sarah smiled back and felt the color rush to her face at his touch. His hand was surprisingly soft, warm, so pleasant. A huge wave of excitement swept over her, and frightened by these new, unfamiliar sensations, she quickly withdrew her hand. David interpreted this in his own way. I'm sorry, is my handshake unpleasant? No, it's just that we shook hands for a bit too long. Sarah tried to deflect. Let's go get coffee now. Let's go, David agreed, smiling again. He liked this unusual girl. Stepping out of the university building, they stopped hesitantly. There were 4 cafes nearby, and they had to choose where to go. Sarah, accustomed to establishments of a completely different level, suggested without hesitation, "Let's go to the Griffin. You can have a proper lunch there. It's already time. Do you mind?" David looked at his new acquaintance with even greater astonishment. The Griffin. He had only walked past such restaurants. He knew perfectly well that this place was special, and the prices there were, to put it mildly, not at all student-friendly. But admitting his modest financial situation to the girl was extremely embarrassing, so he simply nodded in agreement, vaguely imagining how he would pay in this expensive establishment. However, an even greater surprise awaited David inside the restaurant. It suddenly turned out that Sarah was a regular here. She had a favorite table, and the waiters greeted her like a distinguished guest. "Do you come to this restaurant often?" David asked, surprised. "Yes, Dad and I often have lunch and dinner here. They have very good chefs. You don't have to worry about the quality of the food." "So you're..." Dad says. "Ah, I see. That's good." David began to feel nervous now. Of course, he understood that children of very different parents studied at the university, but Sarah didn't give the impression of a spoiled, rich kid who attended classes just for show and passed exams by paying. And this just didn't fit into his head. "Sarah, why did you choose such an unusual profession for a girl?" "Rather, the profession chose me." Sarah smiled. In this restaurant, she felt almost at home, and this gave her a little confidence. With David, the situation was completely opposite. He grew up in a simple working-class family, but his parents saw potential in their son and insisted on him getting a good education. He even managed to get a state-funded place after the army and received an increased scholarship. And then his talent was noticed by the professors, and the young man, as they say, went uphill. And now, at 28, he was already writing his dissertation. "I see. Do your parents work in this field?" David clarified. "Yes, Dad does. But honestly, I like this field too. I guess genes played a role in choosing a profession. Although as a child, I dreamed of becoming an actress or a singer. Many girls dream of that as children. That's true. David, let's order something already, or I'll faint from hunger soon." "What do you like?" Sarah asked, handing him the menu. "To be honest, I'm not hungry," David replied, although he was ravenous. He definitely couldn't afford his lunch, but 2 cups of coffee. Quite possibly. "Idiot, you'll have to pay for her lunch. You can't just say, 'Excuse me, Sarah, I'm only paying for the coffee I drank.' Nightmare. Where am I going to get that much money?" David was stunned by his thoughts. Sarah, as if reading his mind, said, "Don't worry, lunch is on me. I invited you here myself. Order whatever you like, don't be shy." True, feeling like a poor freeloader was even more humiliating than just being poor. But David genuinely liked this girl even before she invited him to this restaurant, and he sincerely didn't know what to do. Sarah came to his rescue again. "David, listen, it's okay. Don't make me feel awkward because I invited you here. I honestly did it purely out of habit." "All right, then next time I'm inviting and paying, deal?" "Next time?" Sarah couldn't believe her ears. "Of course, if you accept my invitation." "Certainly, I will." the girl replied timidly. Sarah didn't yet imagine how this was possible, or what she would tell her father. She simply wasn't thinking about it now. She just wanted to enjoy talking to this nice young man for as long as possible. He was very interesting, intelligent, educated. They spoke the same language and understood each other perfectly. About half an hour into their conversation, the phone rang, and Sarah suddenly remembered that she hadn't called her father after classes. She grabbed her phone. "Hi, Daddy. Sorry, I got a little delayed. I was just about to call you." She rattled into the receiver in one breath. "Hello, dear. Where are you now?" her father asked. "Stopped by our restaurant for lunch." "Excellent. I'll be there in half an hour. Wait for me, please." "Yes, okay, I'll wait." Sarah looked at the phone in fright, then at David, and dropped the device into her bag in confusion. Did something happen? David understood from her expression. "I don't even know how to say it. My father will be here in half an hour." "Is he strict?" "Very." That was putting it mildly, but Sarah changed her mind about telling the truth. "How to put it? Not very, but a little strict." "Are you afraid he'll see us together?" David guessed. Sarah looked at her new acquaintance hopefully. She so wanted to sit with him a little longer, just talk. But how could she explain this to Dad? "I won't be able to explain who you are to him," Sarah stammered out. "Does he forbid you from seeing boys?" The young man again showed a remarkable ability to guess. "Yes," Sarah breathed out. "I understand. That's not a problem. Let's meet another time. I understand what a strict parent means. Don't worry or get upset. We'll definitely have lunch or dinner together again." He took a pen and notebook from his briefcase, quickly wrote down his number, and handed it to Sarah. "Call me when you have a chance to meet." "Okay, I definitely will. I'll find a way," Sarah said and added a little quieter. "Sorry this happened. And thank you for understanding. I'm really embarrassed." "It's all right. I should run. Nice meeting you, Sadie." "I was very glad too," Sarah smiled back, although in reality she wanted to cry from annoyance that their conversation had ended so quickly. After David left, Sarah just sat, looking out the window. She was waiting for her father. Maybe I should talk to him frankly, tell him I met a guy. He's not some bum. He's a graduate student, so he's smart. Dad should like him, Sarah tried to convince herself. And then she immediately talked herself out of the idea. Yeah, and if I remember Alex, I don't even want to introduce them. Alex was a guy who once came to visit their neighbors. He was only a couple of years older than Sarah. They were 15 and 17 respectively at the time. But Dad decided that Alex was bothering Sarah and kicked him out. Yes, he just took him and threw him out of the house. And he strictly told Sarah no dates or meetings until she finished her education. But now the diploma was practically in her hands. Maybe Dad would change his attitude, and now it was possible. Sarah decided to take a risk and talk to her father honestly. Her father arrived exactly half an hour after the call. You could always set your watch by him. It was surprising that even when caught in traffic, he could accurately predict his arrival time. Mr. Harrington, that was Sarah's father's name, came up to the table and kissed his daughter on the cheek. "Hello, dear. How was university? How are you feeling?" "Hi, Daddy. I need to talk to you." Sarah decided to start with the main point right away, fearing her resolve would soon vanish. "Important?" her father clarified. "Probably." Sarah evaded a direct answer. Well, I have something important to talk to you about too. Who goes first?" "Can I?" Sarah asked for permission, not even imagining what her father wanted to tell her. "Of course, Sunshine. I'm listening carefully. What happened?" "You see, it's like this. Remember you told me not to see anyone until I finished my education?" "I remember," her father replied and smiled. It seems we're thinking along the same lines. Seriously? Sarah rejoiced prematurely. That's great. Anyway, I met a guy today. He's a graduate student, writing his dissertation with my dean. We talked a little. He's a very interesting, educated young man. He's 28, served in the army, earns his own money, and is writing a very serious dissertation. Mr. Harrington's face changed. He frowned more and more. Sarah saw that her father wasn't interested in this story. But what he said next was something Sarah herself utterly disliked. "What's this story leading to?" her father clarified. "I wanted to ask your permission to see David. You won't object, will you? I'm leaving for England in 2 months, and I'd like to relax a bit after studying and just spend time with a pleasant young man." "You will have such an opportunity. That's exactly what I wanted to talk to you about," her father began in a tone that made Sarah uneasy. "You have finished your education. Internships in Europe are ahead, and it won't be very good if you go there as an unmarried girl. Therefore, I would like to introduce you to a very interesting young man. His name is Richard. He is, of course, older than you, but he is smart, wealthy, promising, and will be a reliable protection and support for you." Sarah looked at her father in surprise. She didn't understand what he was talking about. "He saw you, and he liked you very much. We have already discussed all the details and nuances of your life together. Both of us are satisfied. All that remains is for you to meet and set the wedding date." "Dad, wait! What wedding? I don't want to marry a money bag. I want to marry for love." Sarah tried to object. "No problem. You'll see him and fall in love immediately. He is a very decent man and attractive." "I don't need decent, attractive. I need someone I choose with my heart." "Listen to me, child. I already chose your mother with my heart. And how did that end?" "What does that have to do with anything?" "It has to do with the fact that you should choose with your mind, not your heart. The heart is a bad advisor, a very bad one." "But I don't want to live with someone I don't like." "Why did you decide you definitely won't like him?" "Dad, how old is he?" 32, only 10 years older than you. Is that a lot?" "No," Sarah answered honestly. "Dad, but I like David." "Listen, you saw this David for the first time in your life today. It's quite possible that upon closer acquaintance, you won't like him at all. Besides, for comparison, you can meet Richard, and then you can decide for yourself who you like more. Richard might actually appeal to you, or will you reject him from the start because I'm suggesting him?" "No, of course not. I will definitely meet him. It's just unexpected." "Agreed, unexpected. I myself haven't gotten used to the idea that you're getting married yet." "I'm not getting married yet," Sarah objected. "But you might," her father corrected himself, although it was obvious that he had already made the decision. "Dad, can I ask one more question?" "Of course." "And if I absolutely don't like Richard, and David turns out to be a good person, can I marry David?" Mr. Harrington looked at his daughter in surprise, as if mentally asking, "Are you seriously asking this question, or just mocking me?" "Of course not." But he said something else aloud. "I think you can, but I also need to meet your David and see what he's like." "Okay, thank you." "Thank you for what?" "For hope?" "Hope. Hope," her father said thoughtfully. "Everyone has the right to hope. But life often throws such curveballs, and hopes don't come true. That's the truth of life, alas." "I don't like that kind of truth," Sarah said, childishly offended. "All right, let's have lunch. Then we'll go home. And by evening, you need to get ready. Richard will be coming." "Today?" Sarah couldn't believe it. "Of course. Why wait? You need to spend at least a little time together before the wedding. Get used to each other." At that moment, Sarah clearly understood that her father wouldn't even consider other candidates. He had already decided everything, and no David, William, or Andrew had a single chance, because a certain Richard had already been appointed to the role of husband. This was the most painful part. Sarah was deprived not only of hope, but also of the right to choose. Sarah drove home in complete despair. It felt as if a steamroller had run over her. She was simply crushed. Sarah knew her father's character perfectly well and understood that further conversations on this topic were pointless. The only thing she would achieve was that her father would tighten control, and the possibility of meeting David would disappear without a trace. And Sarah really didn't want that. So she decided to play along with her father, pretend that she liked Richard. Her father would relax and lower his guard, which Sarah would surely take advantage of. Sarah waited for the evening with extraordinary excitement. On the one hand, she was curious to see the man her father was proposing as her husband. On the other hand, she was afraid of what would happen if she absolutely didn't like him. After all, no arguments worked on her father once he had made a decision. Richard was supposed to arrive at 8 o'clock. Her father told Sarah to be ready and dress formally. Sarah didn't object and got herself completely ready. She even wanted to make an impression on the uninvited guest. Richard arrived exactly at 8, as befits a polite and punctual gentleman. Sarah was coming down from the second floor, terribly nervous. She entered the living room and saw Richard standing half-turned. A tall, well-built, and quite handsome young man. He turned around, and Sarah froze in place. On his left cheek, he had a huge scar, starting under his eye and ending on his lower jaw. The scar was deep and very noticeable. How awful, Sarah thought, barely refraining from saying it aloud. Sadie, dear, meet Richard, my partner in some financial matters. I turned to Richard. Rich, this is my beautiful daughter, Sadie. Please meet each other. I need to leave you for a couple of minutes. Her father left, and Sarah stood rooted to the spot at the entrance to the living room. She simply couldn't move from shock. Richard began to approach, and Sarah wanted to scream and call for help. But she, of course, didn't do that, because it would look utterly ridiculous. Very nice to meet you, Sarah. Mr. Harrington has told me a lot about you. Likewise, though I'm only just meeting you today, Sarah said sarcastically. Richard pretended not to notice the sarcasm in her words and gestured towards the sofa. Shall we sit? Let's. When they sat on the sofa, with Sarah sitting a meter away from the guest, Richard looked at the girl searchingly and unexpectedly said directly, Sadie, I know the role you are intended for. I understand your doubts about me. My appearance frightens and repels you. I plan to have a series of plastic surgeries to get rid of this disfigurement, but I simply won't have time to do it before the wedding. You might ask why I didn't have the operations earlier. My answer is, first, I didn't have the financial means. Then I didn't have the time. Then I didn't have the need. Now all three components are present, and I am ready to go to the surgeon. So, if this bothers you, don't worry. It will be resolved positively soon. Sarah looked at the potential groom in silence. She didn't even know what to say to him. Interesting. Will he always talk to himself? Or will I at least occasionally be able to get a word in? Sarah thought with a smile for some reason. Did something amuse you? Richard didn't understand. No, sorry. I was thinking about something else. Sarah deflected. Although she knew she was behaving improperly, and to smooth things over, she decided to support him. It's very brave of you to decide on the operation. Some people are so afraid of surgeons that they just accept it and live like that. To be honest, I had resigned myself to it a long time ago. But I understand that a young girl will be uncomfortable being near such a monster, so I decided on the operation. You're not... Sarah began. Is it just that the scar is very noticeable, and that's why you were startled when you saw me head-on? Richard asked. I wasn't exactly startled, just didn't expect it. and she mentally cursed her father. He could have warned me. It's okay, I'm not offended. I'm used to this reaction from girls. He's kind of strange. If he's seen girls' reactions, why didn't he have the operation earlier? 6 months? A year ago? He didn't just get rich yesterday, Sarah reasoned. Sarah, tell me, what are your hobbies? What do you like? I'd like to know more about you. Sarah briefly talked about her childhood, hobbies, and clubs. Richard listened attentively, as if mentally recording the information. That's what you were made to do. I'm asking what you like for your soul. What music, what movies, what cuisine do you prefer? Sarah looked at Richard in surprise. Why are you so surprised by my question? I didn't think you'd be interested, Sarah said honestly. She was starting to like this man simply as a person. Of course, just liking him. There was no hint of falling in love. Sarah, I'm not some monster or Bluebeard. I'm a normal person, and I genuinely like you very much. I first saw you 3 years ago at an event. You were with your father, and I haven't been able to forget you since. I would very much like to make you happy, Richard said, looking directly into her eyes. If you allow me, of course. Sarah was silent, not knowing what to answer. If you absolutely don't like me or find me repulsive, I won't pursue you or anything else. I will withdraw. But I would very much like to have a small chance. After all, everyone has the right to hope. The last phrase was decisive for Sarah. Just today, she had said the same thing. All right, let's try. Thank you. He leaned over and kissed her hand. Richard, let's switch to using first names. It's much more comfortable to talk that way, and it does bring people closer, Sarah suggested. I would be very happy if you would call me by my first name. The man smiled sincerely. Then you can just call me Sadie, the girl smiled back. Her father returned, and they went to dinner. During dinner, the men mostly talked. Sarah sat silently, watching what was happening, and at the same time thinking about how she could meet David the next day. In the morning, Sarah dialed David's number. He answered almost immediately. Yes? A confident voice sounded. Hello, David. Sarah greeted him in a hesitant voice. Sadie. He recognized the girl immediately. I'm so glad you called. How are you? Did you have any problems with your father yesterday because of me? No, everything's fine. Don't worry. Can we meet today? Of course, I'd be very happy to. I'm completely free after 1. Excellent. Then let's meet at 2 in the Central Park, by the fountain. Agreed? I'll be looking forward to seeing you. Sarah had just hung up the phone when there was a knock at the door, and her father entered. Good morning, dear. How are you? How did you sleep? Good morning, Daddy. Everything's fine. What are your plans for today? I want to go to the salon and get a new hairstyle. For some reason, I feel like changing my style. You know, new life, new hairstyle. That's what girls usually do. You won't object, will you? No, of course not. I didn't get a chance to ask you yesterday. What did you think of Richard? You know, I liked him, Sarah said honestly. Very intelligent and considerate. See, I told you. When are you meeting? Hopefully tomorrow, Sarah lied. Hopefully? Her father repeated. That's good. I think if you call him, it won't be a big deal. He said he'd call me himself today, and we'd arrange where to meet. This was true. They had indeed agreed on that. Excellent. I'm very happy, daughter. He's a very good man. I think so too. Thank you, Daddy. Sarah got out of bed, went to her father, and pecked him on the cheek. You're a smart girl. I always knew that. Once I get you into reliable hands, I'll be at ease. All right, run along to the shower. I'll see you for breakfast. Sarah went to the shower, rejoicing in her own cleverness along the way. After breakfast, she returned to her room and began going through her wardrobe. She needed to choose an outfit that David would like. but at the same time, one that wouldn't raise questions from the staff, who of course reported everything to her father. If Sarah wore something too beautiful and dressy, the question would inevitably arise: why go to the salon dressed like that? So Sarah, without much thought, decided to wear light cotton trousers and a light t-shirt that perfectly emphasized her neckline, but looked quite ordinary. Around 1 o'clock, Sarah left the house. She decided to take public transport and not call a taxi. Sarah rarely took the bus or minivan. Her father objected, but today she decided, go big or go home. And she took the bus. Sarah looked around with interest from the window. Passers-by walked by, each busy with their own affairs. They didn't care at all what was happening in Sarah's soul. And in the girl's soul, a real storm of emotions was raging. She was trying to figure out what to do and how to secretly meet David. And although he hadn't made such a proposal yet, Sarah felt that he would definitely suggest they see each other. Having arrived at the Central Park by bus, Sarah got off and slowly walked towards the fountain. From a distance, she already saw David's familiar figure. He was looking around. In his hands was a huge bouquet of roses. Where will I put them later? It's a shame to throw them away, Sarah thought sadly. David noticed the girl and waved. Sarah approached. Hi, she said simply. Good afternoon. I'm so glad to see you. Me too, Sarah smiled. Shall we switch to first names right away? Let's. Shall we walk around or go sit somewhere? Let's better sit somewhere, Sarah suggested. She perfectly understood that walking around the park in the city center was not the best idea. Too many people knew her. They could easily tell her father about it. And the place David would take her to was unlikely to be frequented by people from her circle. She could relax there and not worry. Excellent. Today I'm inviting you, treating you. Remember? Of course. Where shall we go? How about pizza? David suggested. With pleasure. I love pizza, Sarah agreed. She was a little nervous, thinking about exactly where they would go. Sarah had a very sensitive stomach, so she was careful about choosing cafes and restaurants. But to Sarah's surprise, David took her to a rather well-known and good pizza place. What kind of pizza do you like? David asked. With ham, mushrooms, and double cheese, Sarah smiled. And definitely with a cheese crust. David's mouth dropped open in surprise. No way! Are you serious? What do you mean? Sarah didn't understand. That's my favorite pizza. Then we have the same taste, Sarah smiled. They ordered a huge pizza and a glass of apple juice each. As it turned out, their tastes coincided in this as well. Sarah didn't like any exotic fruits, except perhaps pineapple, and preferred to drink apple juice. David said he hadn't drunk any juice other than apple since childhood. They talked a lot. The conversation was easy and very pleasant. It turned out that their tastes coincided not only in terms of pizza and juice. They had so much in common that it felt like they were Siamese twins. That doesn't happen, Sarah said, for people to be so similar. I used to think so too, David smiled. They felt so good together, and despite the presence of other visitors, it seemed to them that there was no one else around. Sarah came to her senses when the phone rang. It was her father calling. Hello, how's your hair? Are you still recognizable? Her father joked. Sarah suddenly realized that she needed to change her haircut somehow. Otherwise, she wouldn't be able to explain to her father where she had been all this time. But when she looked at the clock, she was even more scared. It was already 6 p.m. For now, yes, Daddy. Not right now. It's a little inconvenient to talk. Can I call you back later? Yes, of course. I just wanted to check on you and tell you that I'm leaving for 3 days tomorrow on business. Did I tell you? I don't remember. I hope you and Chloe will be well behaved. There was definitely irony in his voice, but concern was also present. Don't worry, Daddy. I promise you, everything will be perfectly fine. Sarah could barely contain her joy. 3 days! She would have a whole 3 days with David. Good. Should I pick you up from the salon or will you come yourself? Her father clarified. No need, Daddy. I won't be done for a while. I'll take a taxi. All right. See you at home. Sarah put her phone back in her purse and looked at David. Never before would she have said or done what she was about to say and do in the coming days. What are your plans for the next couple of days? Sarah asked directly. None yet. I'm on vacation now. No need to go to work. Just quietly writing my dissertation. Why do you ask? We can spend the next 2 days together. Then... Sarah paused, not knowing how to continue. Then I'm leaving for a long time, for a year, to England for an internship. That's a shame. I'll miss you and wait. I'll wait very much. David, do you have a place where no one could see or find us? Sarah ignored his words. My parents' summer house. They only go there on weekends, and not always even then. And tomorrow is Thursday, so we can go there. We have a very nice summer house. My grandfather built it. It was clear that David was nervous. He was an adult and perfectly understood why a girl would want to be alone with a guy. Of course, he liked the idea, but he didn't expect things to move so quickly. Even less did he expect the initiative to come from such a modest girl. And, like Sarah, he couldn't know why she actually wanted to speed up this moment. Very good. I'll buy groceries, take a taxi, and pick you up around 11. Is that all right? Sarah had never been so decisive and confident, as if some inner force was guiding her on what to do. Yes, of course. Excellent. Write down the address for me. Actually, no. I'll call you from the taxi. Sarah was terribly nervous, shocked by her own behavior, but she felt that this was exactly what she had to do. Sadie, are you sure you're all right? David asked, concerned. He saw the girl's state and felt that she was somehow different. Yes, I'm all right, David. I need to go now. We'll definitely talk tomorrow. I'm really sorry. Yes, of course. No problem. I'll wait for your call tomorrow. Sarah stood up, looked at David, and smiled mysteriously. See you tomorrow, and thank you for a wonderful lunch. Sarah left the pizza place and headed towards the center. There were several salons there that she sometimes visited. She urgently needed to refresh her haircut so as not to arouse her father's suspicions. The phone rang. It was Richard calling. Good evening, Sarah. How are you? How are you feeling? Hi, sorry, it's not a good time to talk. I'm at the salon. Can I call you back later? Yes, of course. Enjoy your transformation. Sarah entered the salon. By a stroke of luck, the stylist Sarah occasionally went to was free. Sarah asked her to shorten her hair a bit and cut it differently, and at the same time handed her the bouquet of flowers. She couldn't just throw them away after all. These are from me, just to brighten your mood, Sarah said. Thank you so much, Sarah. Are you sure about your decision? You have a very beautiful hairstyle right now. It suits you. Hannah, please, just do as I ask. Okay, as you say, the bewildered girl agreed. Sarah changed her hairstyle, called a taxi, and went home. Her father was already home. Seeing his daughter, he waved to her from the garden gazebo. Sadie, come show off your transformation. Sarah entered the gazebo. Her father critically examined her new hairstyle and summarized. It turned out all right, interesting. Good job, it suits you. Thanks, Daddy. Are you hungry? No, I had a snack in the city. I'm going up to my room. I'm very tired. All these beauty treatments are terribly exhausting, Sarah lied. Women have their own problems and difficulties. What can you do? Beauty requires sacrifice. Go on, sunshine, rest. I'll check on you a little later. Okay, I'll be waiting for you, Sarah replied and hurried to her room. She needed to figure out how to leave for 2 days tomorrow without arousing the staff's suspicion, And most importantly, what story to invent so that the housekeeper, Mrs. Davies, would believe her and not report her to her father. This was the most difficult part of her plan. Sarah lay on her bed and, staring at the ceiling, concocted tall tales. So far, none of the versions were good enough, and she needed to think fast. She called her neighbor, Chloe. "Hi, are you busy?" "Hi, Sarah. No, did something happen?" "Chloe, I need your help. You're a master at this kind of thing. Can you come over?" "I'll be right there, no problem." Chloe was intrigued. Chloe was indeed a master. She had repeatedly gone away with guys for a day or two, and always came up with such plausible stories that even her parents believed her. Now, all of Sarah's hope rested solely on Chloe's talent for invention. Chloe arrived 10 minutes later. Meeting Mr. Harrington in the garden, she easily lied that she urgently needed Sarah herself, and proceeded directly to her friend's room. "So, what's going on with you?" she asked from the doorway. "Come in, close the door," Sarah requested. Chloe, unlike Sarah, lived life to the fullest. She had dropped out of university after 3 years under the pretext that she hadn't decided on a profession. Her parents indulged her and allowed her to take a break. Chloe was a late child, which meant she had been pampered from birth, and the girl did whatever she wanted. True, she wasn't brazen, didn't hang out with strange crowds, didn't drink much, and didn't smoke at all. She just loved nightclubs and fun company. "Chloe, I need your help," Sarah began. "I already figured that out." "What specifically?" "I need to run away from home for 2 days, but I don't know how to do it without arousing the staff's suspicion and my father's questions. He absolutely mustn't know about it, you understand?" Chloe looked at her friend intently for about 2 minutes. Sarah even started to get nervous about why she was silent for so long. "And are you going to tell me why?" the curious Chloe asked. Sarah hesitated. She didn't want to tell anyone, but she understood that if she didn't tell Chloe, she simply wouldn't help. And without her help, Sarah definitely couldn't manage. "I'll tell you a secret. Just don't tell anyone, okay?" "My lips are sealed," Chloe swore using her favorite expression. And Sarah told her friend about David and about her father's decision to marry her off to a man with a terrible scar. Chloe listened in silence, only occasionally waving her hands in indignation. When Sarah finished her story with her plans for tomorrow, Chloe finally spoke. "Easy. And I don't understand how you even agreed to get married." "Chloe, you know my father. It's useless." "So maybe you should run away with this David." Chloe suggested the idea. She would definitely do that. But Sarah couldn't. She understood that perfectly well. "I can't. I love Dad very much. I have no one else besides him. How can I leave him?" "Yes, I understand. Listen." Chloe lowered her voice to a whisper. "Do I understand correctly that you want to immediately move to the next stage of your relationship with this David?" Sarah's face turned red with embarrassment, and she nodded silently. "Beauty!" Chloe exclaimed in admiration. "Are you that crazy about him?" "Chloe, I just want the first man I'm with to be someone I really like, not this Richard. He's not a bad guy, really, but he doesn't make me feel the way David does." "Wait, so he'll be your first?" Chloe couldn't believe what she was hearing. "Wow, you're a rarity, Sadie, at 22. Amazing!" "And when and with whom could I? I was under total control all the time. I couldn't even go to the movies." "Well, yes, your father definitely went overboard with the control. But anyway, I'll think about it now," Chloe said. She thought for exactly 10 seconds, then suddenly jumped up and ran out of the room. "Uncle Harrington! Uncle Harrington! Can I have a word with you for a minute?" Sarah heard Chloe's voice. At one point, she even got scared. What if Chloe told her father everything? But why would she? Sarah asked herself. No, Chloe isn't like that. She's great and a true friend. 5 minutes later, Chloe and her father entered the room. Chloe looked triumphant. Sarah had no idea what she had come up with, but she understood that her plan, as always, had worked. "Sunshine, why didn't you ask me yourself?" Her father asked a question Sarah didn't know how to answer. Chloe immediately jumped into the conversation. "Uncle Harrington, it's just that I wasn't sure myself if it would work out until the very end, but now it's confirmed." And I ran to tell Sadie. "So, are you letting us go?" "Yes, of course, especially since I'm also leaving for 3 days. Have a good rest, girls. This is your time." "Did Sarah tell you she's getting married?" "Yes, she already bragged about it," Chloe said enviously. "Well, there you go. So when else can she relax with a friend if not now? I think it's the perfect time." "Thank you very much, Uncle Harrington. We'll be good girls," Chloe gushed. Her father left the room and closed the door. Sarah stared at Chloe, stunned. "What did you tell him?" "You're a lucky friend," Chloe smiled, satisfied. "The thing is, I'm going to my friend's place by the lake for 3 days in the Moscow region tomorrow, and I asked him if you could come too, like I'd be bored and all that. Uncle Harrington didn't even try to object. He was even happy that you'd be under my supervision these days." "That's amazing. You really got lucky. I owe you one. Thank you so much." "Oh, stop it. It's all right. Go wild there. Don't forget to buy some wine, or better yet, champagne," Chloe advised thoughtfully. The girls agreed to leave at 10. Sarah would just have time to stop by the supermarket for groceries and pick up David at 11. So far, everything was going according to plan. Sarah thanked Chloe 5 times for her help, said goodbye, and went to pack. Now she could confidently prepare without fearing her father's questions. When Sarah finished packing her backpack, her father came into the room. "Not sleeping?" "No, Daddy, come in." "Sadie, I don't know how to say this," he began, but for some reason fell silent. This silence frightened Sarah. She didn't know what exactly her father wanted to talk about, and it was unsettling. "You'll be getting married soon, and you'll have your wedding night. I know you've never been with anyone before. You haven't, have you?" "No, Daddy, I haven't. But I don't want to talk about this. Honestly, I've read books. I only know what you want to say. Let's leave this between me and my future husband. I think we are adults and can figure it out ourselves. And it's too early to talk about it anyway. I'm not getting married tomorrow." Sarah deliberately didn't say between me and Richard. Deep down, she still held out hope that things could change. What if? "Are you sure?" her father clarified. "Yes, Dad, I'm sure." "All right, then let's drop the subject. I'm leaving early tomorrow. I won't wake you. You and Chloe, be careful there. Behave yourselves." "Daddy, everything will be fine. Don't worry." Sarah hugged and kissed her father. She truly loved him very much and was grateful for everything he did for her, for everything except choosing her groom. In the morning, Sarah woke up at the crack of dawn. The excitement of the upcoming event was taking its toll. She quickly showered and went down for breakfast. Then she returned to her room and checked again to make sure she had packed everything. At 9:30, Sarah was standing in the yard with her backpack in her hands. Chloe, seeing her from her window, laughed. She waved to her friend and signaled that she would be out in 5 minutes. Sarah called a taxi. The friends got into the car and drove off. Chloe was dropped off along the way, and Sarah went to the hypermarket for groceries. Having stocked up thoroughly, as if planning a feast, and buying various delicacies, Sarah grabbed 2 bottles of champagne and headed for the checkout. Already in the taxi, she called David. David answered immediately and said he was waiting for her by the entrance. After picking up David, they drove to the summer house. David's family's summer house was in a surprisingly beautiful location. The house itself was small but very cozy and well-maintained. A small 2-story wooden house, practically arranged inside, surprised Sarah. She had imagined a summer house would look like something out of a movie, semi-abandoned. But no, the house was very nice, with all conveniences. There was even a fireplace in the house. The guys unloaded their things and all the grocery bags and went into the house. "Sadie, is someone coming to visit us?" David smiled. "What do you mean?" Sarah didn't understand the question. "Well, there are enough groceries here for a crowd that could be fed to the brim for at least a couple of days. I just didn't know what we'd want, so I bought a variety of things." "I see. A practical girl," David praised. Sarah was putting away the groceries at that moment. Suddenly, she stopped and looked intently at the young man. David even froze under her gaze. He felt as if Sarah was scanning him. "Sadie, are you all right?" "Yes," Sarah answered briefly and continued putting groceries in the refrigerator. "You seem very tense." "A little," Sarah admitted honestly. David walked up to her, took her hand, and took the ham from her hand. He pulled her towards him. "Sadie, my dear, don't worry. Everything will be fine with us, you'll see." He hugged and kissed the girl for a long time. Sarah melted in his arms. They forgot about the groceries and the champagne and everything else in the world, and just enjoyed each other. Sarah lay on the pillow, looking at the ceiling. She felt very good. "Sadie, do you absolutely have to go to England?" "Unfortunately, yes, for 6 months, then to Belgium for the same amount of time. Everything is already arranged and paid for. Father will never agree to cancel this trip. Although right now, I want to go there less than anything." Tears streamed from Sarah's eyes. David felt the girl's state and leaned up to kiss her. And Sarah was torn by a dilemma from within. Should she tell him about Richard or not? The girl decided to postpone this conversation for later. She didn't want to spoil the moment. "Sweetheart, don't worry. I'll wait for you, I promise. We can chat on messengers 10 times a day if you like. I'm an adult and can certainly wait a year and wait for the woman I love." How pleasant his words sounded. The woman I love. But Sarah understood that he wouldn't have to wait, or rather, there would be no one to wait for. Because Sarah would become someone else's wife, and he would be the one waiting for her return from the trip. This realization made things even worse, and Sarah cried even louder. David, not understanding the true reasons for her tears, continued to promise to wait for her return. And Sarah couldn't take it anymore. "David, I have to tell you something. It's very important. I don't want to lie to you, so it's better to tell you now so I don't suffer and torment myself." She told him about her father's decision, about Richard, about the fact that no one would listen to her, and about the fact that they had no chance at all of being together. A stunned David looked at Sarah and couldn't understand how such a thing could happen in the modern world. "Sadie, this is like the Middle Ages. How can your father choose a groom for you and not allow you to be with someone else? What about your feelings and desires? Does he not care at all how you'll live with him?" "I understand your indignation. I completely agree with it. But I truly have no choice. Let's run away together." "Where? How? What about your dissertation?" "To hell with the dissertation. You are more important to me. I want to be with you. I feel like you're my other half. I've known you for 3 days, and it feels like a lifetime. Sadie, please, let's run away." Her father would forgive later. He was her father after all. "I can't do that. I just can't. But there's another option. I'll introduce you to my father and try to convince him to give you a chance. That's a more realistic option than just cowardly running away." "Why cowardly? We're running because they're forcing you to marry someone you don't love. Those are different things. You know what happens when you rearrange the terms? Running away is always cowardice, I think. And it doesn't matter what the motives for running are. I'm not used to running, and I don't want to. Let's try to fight. If it doesn't work, Then we'll think about what to do next. All right. Agreed. But remember, my offer stands. Thank you. I'm glad you understand. Sarah kissed David, and they were lost in each other again. All 3 days the couple spent together, they were practically inseparable. It seemed that Sarah felt that her father wouldn't allow her to be with the one she loved. Listen, you know what I was thinking? Sarah suddenly said. If Dad doesn't let us be together, we can still see each other, right? Are you suggesting we become lovers? You want me to share you with that monster with the scar? Of course, I don't want that. It's just another backup option. Sorry, but I don't like that option. I'd rather take you to Siberia than share you with someone else. I understand. Okay, Sarah said, disappointed. She didn't want to go home, but she had to. They called a taxi and returned to the city. David got out first, and then Sarah went home. She had completely forgotten that she was supposed to return with Chloe, as the girls had agreed. Driving up to the house, she got out of the car and slowly walked towards the doors. At that moment, her phone rang. It was Chloe calling. Hey, where are you? Hi, Chloe, I just walked into the yard. I'm back already. Where were you? Are you crazy? We were supposed to come back together. Chloe snapped at her. Well, let's just say you stopped by another friend's place for an urgent matter. Sarah invented an excuse without batting an eye. Wow, the student has surpassed the teacher. Chloe was surprised. You learn fast. Chloe, I feel so bad. What happened? Did he... I saw... No, he's the best. I just really don't want to go back into this atmosphere. And Richard is coming today. I'm afraid I won't be able to control myself and will tell him off. All right, listen to my command. Don't tell anyone off and wait for me. Got it? Don't do anything stupid until I get back. I'll be there in about 2 hours. Okay, Sarah agreed resignedly. She entered the house where a surprise awaited her. Her father and Richard were sitting in the living room. The last thing Sarah wanted right now was to pretend to be polite and act up in front of Richard. Hi, everyone, Sarah said indifferently. Her father, seeing his daughter's state, jumped up from the sofa and walked towards her. Sadie, dear, are you all right? Yes, Daddy, I'm all right. I think I'm getting sick. Sarah lied easily again. It seemed she was getting the hang of it. Go up to your room, lie down. Mrs. Davies will be here soon. Tell her what you want. I'm terribly sleepy. I'm just shutting down. I'll call her later. All right, dear. Go to sleep, of course. Then her father remembered the future son-in-law and quietly said, Oh, Richard is waiting for you there. At least say hello. Sarah slowly walked up to Richard and waved. Hi, how are you? Good afternoon. Thank you, I'm fine. But you don't seem to be. Perhaps you caught a cold. Maybe you want something. Just say the word, and I'll do anything. Sarah wanted to reply that she desperately wanted him to disappear from her life forever, but she knew he meant something else entirely. So she answered delicately, No, I don't need anything, thank you. Excuse me, I'm going up. Yes, of course. Get well soon. Sarah went up to her room, fell onto the bed, and burst into tears. She didn't know what to do now, how to live on. David had clearly said he would never agree to be a lover, and Sarah was unlikely to become his wife. How could she live without the one she loved? There was only one hope left, to try to convince her father. But what could she come up with to make him agree to meet David? Sarah didn't know the answer to any of these questions, and so she fell asleep in tears. Sarah woke up around 6 in the evening. Chloe had probably come by, but she was told that Sarah was sleeping. She called her friend. Will you come over? Are you really sick? Chloe asked. More like feeling down. Chloe, I don't know what to do. Maybe you, the genius, can come up with something? Oh, this is complicated. I can't go against your father, I'm sorry. I can only support you, cover for you sometimes. Otherwise, I don't even know how else to help. All right, I'll be there soon. The girls discussed the situation for almost 2 hours, but couldn't come up with a solution. Chloe genuinely felt sorry for Sarah. She saw that her friend was distressed and restless, but she didn't know how to help her. 2 weeks passed. Sarah pretended to be sick all this time, regularly talked to David, and completely ignored Richard. Her father didn't pressure her, believing that his daughter was ill. The day before the weekend, Sarah finally decided to talk to her father and asked for a meeting with David. Her father looked at his daughter in surprise. "Excuse me, but why do I need to meet him? You seem to have made your choice, or not?" "No," Sarah said honestly and resolutely. "What about Richard?" "Firstly, he hasn't proposed anything to me yet. Secondly, I haven't promised him anything. Dad, I'm asking you, please talk to David. He's a very good person. You'll see for yourself." "All right," her father gave in. "Let him come for dinner tonight, around 7. "Thank you, Daddy." Sarah rushed to him, hugged and kissed him. She ran to her room to call the one she loved and share the good news. David didn't share Sarah's joy. He sensed some trickery from her father, and he wasn't mistaken. When David arrived for dinner, Richard arrived right after him. Her father had made a clever move and also invited the potential son-in-law for dinner. Sarah was furious. She hadn't expected this from her father. "Dad, why did you do this? I asked you to talk to David, not to set up a circus." "No circus. I just want to hear from both contenders, what each can offer you in terms of a future. As a father, I have the right and the duty to know what awaits my daughter, who she will live with, in what house, and under what conditions. Everything is absolutely fair and transparent. If someone is afraid or has nothing to offer, there will be no conversation." Sarah understood everything. Her father had deliberately agreed to this meeting not just to refuse Sarah herself, but also to humiliate David, so that the young man wouldn't even think of trying to win Sarah over. This was vile, very vile. She left the study and slammed the door. David and Richard were sitting in the living room. They were silent, waiting for the owner of the house and his daughter to appear. Sarah entered the living room and stopped, looking at the two men who were vying for her hand and heart. One was infinitely dear to Sarah herself. The other was liked by her father. At the sight of Sarah, both stood up and froze in expectation. Her father followed, looking extremely displeased. "Good evening, gentlemen," her father began immediately. "We are gathered here to resolve an important matter for all of us." This sounded ridiculous and pompous. Sarah felt ill from what was happening, but she clearly couldn't influence or change the situation. "So, both of you gentlemen, dream of seeing my daughter as your wife," her father continued. "But since there are two contenders for my Sarah's heart, a choice must be made. This choice will be made by me, not by her. Girls choose with their hearts and often don't think about tomorrow, only about today. Therefore, this task has fallen to me. I am listening to you. What can you offer my daughter? What future? How will you impress?" Sarah looked at her father and seemed to have forgotten how to breathe. At that moment, she didn't see him. She shifted her gaze to David. It physically hurt her for him. He was pale. He clearly hadn't expected such humiliation. David stood up abruptly and looked first at Mr. Harrington, then at Sarah, and then back at the potential father-in-law. "I will not participate in this pompous circus. If you think your daughter will be happy with whom you choose, then that is the biggest mistake of your life. I understand that to achieve your level of wealth, you have to step on others. But to step over your own daughter and disregard her feelings, that's too much even for someone like you. Good evening." David walked towards the door, stopped near Sarah, and said quietly, "One last offer. Let's get out of here. Come with me. You see what's happening, don't you? I can't, Sarah said through tears. Then goodbye. You've made your choice. David went out and slammed the door loudly. The dishes even rattled from the slam, and tears streamed from Sarah's eyes. She felt so ill that her head swam, and she fainted. Sarah woke up in her room. She was lying under the blanket, in her favorite pajamas. Strange, I don't remember changing, the girl thought. With difficulty, Sarah got out of bed, put on her robe, and went downstairs. Mrs. Davies immediately rushed up to her. Sarah, how are you feeling? You scared us all yesterday, she fussed. All right, just a heavy head. What happened anyway? You fainted. We called a doctor, but he said it was nothing serious, probably from nerves. What would you like for breakfast? Yes, probably from nerves. Could you make me coffee with milk, please? Sarah was in a haze all day. In the evening, Chloe came to see her. Sarah told her what had happened yesterday. Her friend was also outraged by her father's behavior. How awful! Did you call David today? I did. It seems he blocked me, Sarah said sadly. And he did the right thing. I'm a traitor towards him after all. Stop it. What does betrayal have to do with it? What else were you supposed to do? I should have gone with him, I guess. And then what? Hide from your father your whole life? He would have found you anyway and brought you home by force. You know that perfectly well. I know, but David doesn't understand that. I'm so tired, Chloe. You have no idea. Yeah, I can see why. And this headache, some kind of nausea. Maybe you should see a neurologist. Let them prescribe something for nerves. Nausea? Chloe clarified. When did that start? Not long ago, a couple of days, but it's really annoying. Maybe my gastritis flared up from stress? Sadie, when is your period due? Sarah looked at her friend in confusion. What does my period have to do with anything? Are you kidding? Hold on. Were you careful in that regard with David? No, of course not. Should I have been? I read that you can't get pregnant the first time. Chloe started laughing loudly. Lord, where did you read such nonsense? You can the first time and the second? And it wasn't just once for you, I take it. No. All right, listen up. You need to buy a pregnancy test, and urgently. While there's still time to get an abortion, just in case. What are you talking about? An abortion? I'll never do that in my life. Let father tear me to pieces, but I won't get rid of David's child. Wow, resolute. I respect that. Okay, I'll go to the pharmacy and bring you a couple of tests, and you'll take them in the morning, then you can think about it. To Sarah's surprise, the tests were positive. All 3. The girl was completely bewildered. Her resolve had vanished, and she thought with horror about what would happen when her father found out. Chloe, I think I'm finished, she told her friend on the phone. Positive? Chloe understood immediately. Yes. What do I do now? What you planned. Have the baby, of course. Getting an abortion at your age is dangerous. And how do you tell your father this news? He'll kill me. Tell him the baby is Richard's. Right? And I'll tell Richard it's from the Holy Spirit? No, you need to tell Richard the truth. And then there are 2 options. Either he covers for you and acknowledges the child, or he refuses, and you'll be saved from him, and you won't get married. Either way, you win. Exactly. You're a genius as always. Sarah thanked her friend and hung up, and immediately dialed Richard's number. Yes, Sadie, I'm listening. Hi, I really need to talk to you. Go ahead, Richard offered. No, not on the phone. All right, let's meet this evening. All right, is the Griffin okay for everyone? Yes, excellent. See you there. Sarah eagerly awaited the evening. Her fate was at stake, literally. She called her father and warned him to have dinner without her, because she was having dinner with Richard tonight. Her father was pleased with his daughter's behavior, and the fact that she had finally accepted his candidate. Sarah arrived at the restaurant exactly at 7. Richard was waiting for her at the entrance. Seeing the girl, he stepped towards her and asked anxiously, "Sadie, tell me right away. Did something happen?" "Yes," Sarah said directly. "And I need to talk to you. Let's go in, sit down, and I'll tell and explain everything in detail." "All right, but you're scaring me," Richard admitted. They sat at a table in the back. Sarah looked around the room and unexpectedly asked, "By any chance, do you know who owns this restaurant?" "I do," Richard smiled. "It's my restaurant." "No way! Seriously?" Sarah was surprised. "Absolutely. Sadie, can you tell me what happened?" "Yes, I can. I want to, and I must." And Sarah described the situation she found herself in. "If you refuse to marry me, I will understand. No problem. You are a good person, and I wouldn't want to lie to you." Richard looked at Sarah, barely blinking. He was in shock. The man understood that he needed to say something, but he was so stunned that he couldn't find the words. But most importantly, he needed to make a decision. But what kind? "Well, that's a serious situation," he began. Then he thought for a moment and added, "I will acknowledge your child as mine. I won't tell your father anything, I promise you. And we will definitely get married as soon as possible, before the changes in your appearance become visible." Sarah was surprised and even grateful to Richard. Because if he had refused her now, Sarah would have had to endure a real nightmare, orchestrated by her father. And it was far from certain that Sarah wouldn't have lost the child from all that stress. The child she wanted more than anything in the world. And for the sake of the child, she was ready for anything. 2 weeks later, Richard and Sarah got married. The wedding was loud and grand. Only at the wedding did Sarah learn that her husband was the owner of a whole chain of restaurants, several factories, and also a co-founder of 2 of her father's banks. This was truly news to her. A month after the wedding, Sarah told her father that she was expecting a child. The internship automatically had to be postponed. Her father made every effort to postpone the internship for a year. "Dad, how can I go in a year? Abandon a small child for a year? Can you even imagine that?" "It's nothing to worry about. There are nannies," Richard interjected. "Respected Mr. Harrington, forgive me, but now my wife and I will decide where she goes and where she doesn't. I will resolve the issue of the internship. It's not a problem. If necessary, I will compensate you for the expenses. But I, like Sarah, believe it's unreasonable to go to another country for a year, leaving a small child without a mother." Sarah looked at her husband gratefully. He turned out to be a truly good person and supported his wife in every way. Moreover, he promised not to touch her until she gave birth. This moment surprised Sarah the most. An adult man was willing to endure for over 6 months for someone else's child. Their married life was quiet and peaceful. In her 3rd month of pregnancy, Richard sent Sarah to a sanatorium, while he underwent surgery to remove his scar. Sarah enjoyed her wonderful condition but sincerely worried about her husband and called him several times a day. The operation was successful, and Richard was soon to bring Sarah home. After another ultrasound, Sarah learned that she would have a daughter. She was happy. Even more so now. Daughters are often similar to their fathers, and Sarah dreamed that her girl would be no exception and would look like David. The future grandfather was also happy that he would have a granddaughter. Only Richard didn't express any emotions about this news, but he could be understood. There wasn't much time left until the birth. According to the doctor's calculations, Sarah was supposed to give birth around the 10th or 12th of March. A different date was given to Mr. Harrington, the 10th or 12th of May. Sarah and Richard agreed to pass off the baby as 7 months old so that her father wouldn't have any questions about the dates. Today was the 8th of March. Sarah moved around the house with difficulty because of her huge belly. She felt great, and her mood was excellent. Richard had gone to work, and Sarah was sorting through baby clothes, preparing them for the hospital. Suddenly, she felt a pulling pain in her lower abdomen and immediately called her husband. "Rich, I don't feel well. Maybe we should call an ambulance?" "You shouldn't have let the housekeeper go to her relatives for a week and stayed alone in the house. I'll call an ambulance and I'll be there myself soon. Don't do anything, just rest." "Okay, I'll wait." Richard arrived with the ambulance and went with his wife to the maternity hospital. Sarah was getting worse. She didn't understand why the doctors decided to do a cesarean section. "Do whatever you want, just save my little girl," Sarah pleaded and cried. "Calm down, Mommy. Everything will be all right." Sarah woke up in the ward. Richard was sitting nearby, holding her hand and dozing in the armchair. "Rich," Sarah called faintly. "How did it go?" Richard lowered his eyes and didn't look at his wife. Sarah didn't understand what was happening. "Rich, what? Tell me," she demanded. "Sadie, they didn't save our little girl," Richard said, barely holding back tears. "How can that be? They said everything would be all right." "I don't know what happened. I don't understand these things. The doctor will explain when he comes to examine you." "That can't be. No!" Sarah screamed throughout the ward and burst into hysterical crying. 2 nurses rushed into the ward, then the doctor. Sarah was given an injection, and she fell asleep. 4 days later, Sarah was discharged home. There was no need for her to stay in the maternity hospital anymore. Children were crying and wailing around her. Other people's children. Living children. Sarah's heart was breaking into pieces. She wanted nothing more, dreamed of nothing. Now she didn't care at all what would happen next. Before being discharged, the doctor said that the birth was difficult, and Sarah would never have children again. Never have children. These words echoed in her head like a sentence. Sarah repeated them mentally and aloud, and couldn't think of anything else. Richard, seeing his wife's state, decided to send her to a sanatorium in Switzerland. Sarah obediently agreed. Sarah spent 6 months at the sanatorium and almost fully recovered. At least, she returned alive and with a desire to live on, even without children. After a short stay at home, Sarah went to England for an internship, then to Belgium. During this time, Richard visited his wife several times. They developed a good relationship. A year later, Sarah returned home and slowly began to get involved in her father's affairs. Her father had suddenly started to decline. His health was failing more and more often, and 6 months after Sarah's return, her father made the final decision to transfer his business to his daughter. Now Sarah was entering a new, very busy business life. She fully immersed herself in the business and very quickly became a worthy replacement for Mr. Harrington. 17 years passed. Sarah was now solely known as Ms. Miller, and confidently not only managed all her father's projects, but also expanded them. Mr. Harrington had died 6 years ago, and Sarah had no other blood relatives left in the world. Her only close person was her husband, Richard, who had never disappointed Sarah throughout all these years. This evening, she and Rich decided to have dinner at their restaurant, the Griffin. Lately, Sarah had been so busy with work that she rarely saw her husband. But tonight, she had a relatively free evening, and the couple decided to spend it together. Sarah arrived at the restaurant earlier than her husband, and, sitting at the table, was scrolling through the latest news on her tablet. A waitress walked by and, stumbling, almost fell near Sarah, managing to lean on her chair. "Be careful, you'll break something," Sarah said kindly. "I'm so sorry." "For what?" Sarah didn't understand. "I accidentally bumped into you. I've only been working here for 2 weeks, or rather, working part-time. It was awkward. Please don't tell the owner, or I'll get fired." "I won't, don't worry. Everyone makes mistakes." Thank you. Have a good evening. Sarah looked closely at the girl. It felt as if she had seen her somewhere, or knew her from somewhere. Strange. Where could I have crossed paths with such a young person? Sarah thought, but her reflections were interrupted by Richard, who entered the room. After dinner, when they returned home, Sarah took off her jacket and was about to hang it in the closet, but saw that the pocket flap was turned up. Sarah didn't like it when things looked untidy, and she straightened it. But some force made her check the pocket, and she found a piece of paper folded several times inside. Sarah turned the paper over in her hands. It was clearly from a squared notebook. She hadn't written on such paper in ages. So what was this, and where did it come from in her pocket? Sarah slowly unfolded the paper and saw a few lines of text that were clearly addressed to her. Ms. Miller, your daughter, whom you gave birth to on March 8th, is alive. Your husband Richard arranged for you to think she died during childbirth. If you want details, call this number. And then a phone number was listed. She couldn't believe her eyes. Her daughter was alive. With trembling hands, Sarah carefully folded the paper and hid it in her purse. Her mind was in turmoil. She couldn't understand how such a thing could possibly happen. Such an attentive, caring, loving, truly devoted man like Richard couldn't have done this. Sarah didn't want to believe it, but the person who wrote the note couldn't have been so mistaken. They even got the date of birth right. If it was just someone's cruel joke, the joker would have done it much earlier. Why now? No, something was clearly wrong here, and Sarah understood that she wouldn't be able to live peacefully now without figuring out the situation. Richard entered the bedroom, and Sarah flinched at the sight of her husband. Now she looked at him with different eyes. But why would he do that? Sarah tried to reason. Because he knew it was someone else's child? He didn't want to raise someone else's child and just got rid of her? And he wanted to marry me? It seems clear enough. But can you just abandon a child? And how do you live afterwards? How do you sleep at night knowing that there is a person somewhere? And what kind of person? To Rich, she's nobody, so he doesn't care. But he saw how much I was suffering. It turns out he didn't feel sorry for me either. I married a monster. Sadie, are you all right? Richard asked, sitting down next to his wife. Yes, I'm all right. Sorry, an idea just came to me. I'm going to do some work. Work? It's already past 1. It's nothing. You go to bed. I'll be quick. Sarah left the bedroom and went to her study. She didn't feel like sleeping at all, and she needed to think. And she didn't want to talk to Richard in this state right now. She added the phone number from the note to her contacts and checked her messengers. In one of them, this number was currently online. Should I write or not write? Sarah thought. And impatience won out, and she wrote, Good evening. My name is Sarah Miller. She hadn't changed her surname after marriage. You listed this number as a contact if I wanted to know the details. When and where would it be convenient for you to meet? Sarah looked at the screen hopefully and waited for a response. Suddenly, she saw that someone was typing, and a minute later, she saw a message on the screen. We can meet right now if you wish. Now? Yes, I want to. Sarah was full of determination. She wouldn't be able to sleep until morning anyway. So why sit around doing nothing? Then come to this address, followed by the address where she would be waiting. I can be there in 20 to 30 minutes. Is that all right? Yes, perfectly. Thank you. Sarah grabbed her phone and quickly went upstairs. She peeked into the bedroom. Richard was already asleep. Sarah went into the dressing room, quickly changed, went down to the garage, and drove out of the yard. She arrived at the specified address exactly 20 minutes later. Sarah didn't know this area well, and the private sector didn't particularly appeal to her. She got out of the car and walked up to the gate. and she was about to open it when she suddenly heard behind her, "Well, hello, Mom." Sarah turned around, saw the same waitress girl, and lost consciousness. She woke up in a house. Apparently, she had been carried here when she fell. A woman about 55 years old was sitting nearby, knitting something. She was painfully thin, barely able to stay upright, but she continued knitting slowly. "You're awake?" "Yes." Sarah propped herself up and sat. She looked around. The room was poor, very poor. It was clear that the last renovation had been done here at least 20 years ago. She looked at the woman again and asked, "Excuse me, could I have some water?" "You can." The woman immediately handed her a cup of water. "And who are you?" "I am the one who raised your daughter as my own." Sarah felt as if she had been doused with cold water. She jumped up on the bed. "Please tell me, tell me. How did it happen that I was told one thing, but in reality, it was completely different?" "Your husband saw to it," the woman said softly. "When you gave birth, he went to the head of department and immediately said that you wouldn't be taking the child. The head of department tried to persuade him, saying that the girl was born perfectly healthy, weighing 3,700 grams, 53 centimeters tall, an excellent baby. But your husband said he was willing to pay any amount of money so that the child would remain in this hospital forever, and his wife would not know that she had given birth to a living and healthy child." Sarah was already crying, listening to this woman's story. It was unbearable for her to hear this, but she remained silent, not daring to interrupt or ask a single question. She had to know everything to the end. "I know he paid a very large sum for those times, and we swapped the documents, indicating that the girl died from asphyxia during childbirth. I couldn't have children, and my husband and I decided this was our chance. I persuaded the head of department to give the child to me so that this beautiful girl wouldn't end up in an orphanage. I know what an orphanage is like. I grew up in one myself. The head of department didn't want to send such a good baby to a baby home either, so he immediately agreed. I knew who my Olivia's real parents were, but I kept silent until the very end. And now I have stage 4 cancer, and I don't have much time left. I don't want my girl to be left alone with a living mother, especially since I know that you are not to blame for what happened then. I saw you when you were discharged. I wanted so much to tell you the truth, but the head of department immediately warned me that whoever told you the truth wouldn't live long. Those were your husband's words, and I was scared. I told Olivia everything when I found out she got a job at your husband's restaurant. Such irony of fate, isn't it? And I don't have much time left anyway. I would have told her eventually, and then this coincidence happened. I explained that you were as much a victim as she was. She has no reason to be offended by you, and she wanted to meet you. You won't abandon her, will you?" "Never in my life." Sarah finally found her voice. "You have no idea what you've done for me. I've been cursing myself all these years, thinking I was to blame for the child not surviving, thinking it was my punishment for lying to my father, for getting pregnant out of wedlock. My God, what haven't I thought? You've given me back the meaning of life that I lost many years ago. I don't know how to thank you. Are you sure nothing can be done about your illness?" "I have money. I'll pay for any operation." "Wait, don't rush. No operation can help me now. The most important thing for me now is to know that you won't abandon my daughter." "Our daughter," the woman corrected herself. "I can't abandon her. I already lost her once, even if it wasn't my fault." "Good. Then I wasn't mistaken about you." "Olivia," the woman called out into the room. "Come here, sunshine." The same girl entered the room. Sarah got up from the bed, walked to her daughter, and took her hands. Suddenly, she fell to her knees and began to cry. "Forgive me. Please forgive me. If I had known that my husband would turn out to be such a monster, I would never have trusted him in my life. Forgive me. Forgive me. Get up, don't cry. Mom told me everything. I know you're not to blame. You have nothing to ask forgiveness for. Yes, I do. If I hadn't been a coward, you would have had a completely different life, a different childhood, a different education. Everything different. Is that the most important thing? I'm sorry that. Well, what childhood? What education? I think it's much more important to grow up in a family where you are truly loved, in a family where everyone stands by each other and will never betray you. Money doesn't give you all that. I had a good childhood and good parents who gave me real love, care, affection, things you can never buy with any amount of money. Yes, you're right. Absolutely right. I will never say that again. She turned to the woman who had raised her daughter. Excuse me, what is your name? My name is Mrs. Adams. Girls, I have a great idea. Mrs. Adams, Olivia, we're packing our things and moving to my house. And no excuses will be accepted, Sarah said and added, we'll only take the most valuable things, those dear to your heart. We'll buy everything else. And I don't want to hear anything else. I owe you both a great debt. They moved into the house where Sarah grew up and now lived there together. Sarah divorced Richard. He apologized to his wife, then to Olivia, but Sarah couldn't forgive such a betrayal. Now a completely new life was beginning for Sarah, the life she had dreamed of all these years and thought she had lost forever. But somewhere deep in Sarah's soul, there had always been a glimmer of hope that not all was lost. And hope did not fail her.